So I primarily make sculptures which usually relate to spaces and sometimes kind of rely on architecture or specific surroundings. More recently, my sculptures have started moving a bit, kind of incorporating small motors which make things loop, rotate and regurgitate, like they're kind of caught in some kind of endless cycle. The things and objects and images and words that I'm influenced by kind of accumulate and build up in my studio. So my studio is where things get built, broken down, put back together, patched up and poured out. And that feels quite fluid and malleable. But there's also this other side of my practice where there's very specific measurements or forms that have to be worked out, usually in relation to kind of larger spaces or specific shapes. So for that, I use computer drawing tools where I kind of manipulate them or draw them out on there to kind of get an idea of the shapes and the sizes. But then when they come out of the computer and into the real world, these rules kind of get bent or distorted. And I think there's always a tension between that kind of rigid geometry and something much more succulent that happens in the making process. I'm also interested in silicon as an image and object making method. I think it has a kind of cartoon malleability to it that for me addresses this kind of sticky gap between embodiment and the body as something more dispersed and fluid. Recently, I've been doing these rubber inlaying techniques that are a mix of casting and screen printing methods, where I have to think about the other side of the work and the way I apply layers or colours and materials. The opus sectile technique uses discarded fragments and turns them into image through inlay. They present these ideas of kind of rubbish being elevated to something permanent and wonderful, but I think that the core of it is this idea of translation of object to image, a sort of digestion and a push and pull between flatness and fullness. And I think that's exciting as a kind of reconstitution of something's outlines, like a form of like poetry with matter and things and objects and bodies and flatness.